Tonight, we examine rising diplomatic tensions between Nigeria and the Sahel Alliance of Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso following allegations of airspace violations. The dispute centers on a Nigeria Air Force C-130 aircraft with 11 crew members, which was detained in Bobo Dioulasso, Burkina Faso. Authorities there claimed the aircraft crossed the airspace without clearance. Nigeria's Air Force has rejected that claim, saying the aircraft made an emergency landing due to a technical fault and followed standard aviation procedure. The incident comes as ECOWAS declared a state of emergency in the region, citing growing threats to democracy, especially after the recent failed coup in Benin Republic. On the program tonight, we speak first with Professor Mukhtar Imam, an international relations expert, to unpack the diplomatic and security dimensions of the crisis. And later, in the studio, public affairs analyst Jamilu Mohammed joins us to examine the wider regional implications. But first, let's bring you up to speed with major developments in the polity.
Rivers State Governor Siminalaya Ipubara has formally defected from the People's Democratic Party to the ruling All Progressives Congress. The governor announced his decision on Tuesday during a stakeholders meeting at the government house in Port Harcourt. Ipubara said the move was taken after wide consultations, adding that his priority remains governance and stability in the state. The Senate has approved President Bola Tinubu's request to deploy Nigerian troops to the Republic of Benin after last weekend's attempted coup. Senate President Godswill Akpabio announced the decision during plenary on Tuesday after lawmakers considered the requests in the Committee of the Whole, in line with Section 5, Part 2 of the Constitution. Lawmakers voted unanimously, giving full legislative backing to Nigeria's role in the regional security efforts. The Nigerian Air Force says its C-130 aircraft reportedly detained in Burkina Faso was not seized but made a precautionary landing due to a technical issue. In a statement on Tuesday, Air Force spokesperson Air Commodore Ehimen Ejodame said the aircraft was on a ferry mission to Portugal when the crew noticed a fault shortly after departing Lagos. He said the situation was handled safely and in line with standard aviation procedure. The Economic Community of West African States has declared a state of emergency across the region. ECOWAS Commission President Omar Touray announced this during the 55th session of the Mediation and Security Council at ministerial level in Abuja. He said recent events raised hard questions about the future of democracy in West Africa and exposed deep security gaps across member states.
Update of national issues there. While we await Professor Mukhtar Imam to join the program, here in the studio, as I said earlier, we have Jamilu Mohammed. Jamilu, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Yesterday, it was celebration in a way across Nigeria and even in Benin Republic, following the, obstruction of the plans to, remove the president there. But this morning, we woke up with a wider dimension to the problem. So let's start with Nigeria's Air Force getting to Benin airspace and then boots on ground getting into Benin Republic. Was it a surprise to you?
Well, looking at what is happening or the current happenings around the West African sub-region, it is not surprising. While we would be looking at the normal diplomatic corridors, there are other corridors which are not open to us. The military corridor is not open to us. Military has its own diplomacy too. And when you have situations such as what happened in Benin Republic, we know recently in Guinea, and then
Guinea-Bissau again.
Guinea-Bissau, before those ones, the Sahel States Alliance. Looking at that, you would see a kind of military build-up in the region. not in terms of security, but in terms of its polity. If you have one state, two states, three states been taken over, and even in the Nigerian case, we had recently, we were embroiled in something like there was
attempted or planned to stage,
and so on and so forth, this kind of things. So you would know that there is a military kind of build-up in the West African sub-region. So Nigeria, as we say we are the big brother, I think we owe it not only to ourselves, but to the whole sub-region to be available for any emergency, for any crisis whatsoever. So boots on ground in Burkina Faso would have been...
Benin? Okay, you are referring to Burkina Faso,
yes,
instance.
Burkina Faso. Not only Benin, Burkina Faso could have been deliberate even. It could have been a deliberate issue. It could have been an emergency as...
okay, you are referring to the landing of
the landing of the
aircraft.
C-130.
It could be deliberate.
It could be deliberate. You see, so when you are facing this kind of situations in military parlance, I think you would explore several scenarios. The Nigerian Air Force is saying it was a technical fault.
Yes.
The Alliance of Sahel States are saying that it is an unfriendly incursion. Now, this mix, what you would pick from there is that the military knows something that we are not told. If it was, look at where the plane actually landed.
Yeah, and people are asking,
people are asking questions.
Heading to Portugal.
If you are heading to Portugal, perhaps what we will not see is, we will not see the flight plan. Every aircraft that would go into the sky must, by rule, not only by convention, even by law, have a flight plan. We will not be privy to this flight plan, so we won't know if actually this plane was going to
It's like you are
Portugal.
going deep into the diplomatic military politics. Because throughout the day, the narration out there, of course, AES, as you said, they said we have violated their airspace. Now Nigeria said, no, the aircraft took off from Lagos, I think, a route Portugal, and then it developed that technical fault, and then it landed after securing all civil aviation approvals. But now here you are saying that may not necessarily be the case. Could it be now maybe a kind of show of force to Burkina Faso?
It may not be a show of force. One scenario I'm looking at is, suppose the Sahel states are accusing Nigeria of espionage, which is very possible.
Well, I think technically they have done that. Now that they said their airspace
has been violated.
Yes.
And then you have to also look at how the situation occurred. It was in Burkina Faso. Although we know that they say they call themselves the Alliance for Sahel States, AES. But then, why are they giving a joint press statement? Why are they giving joint statements?
That question should be for you, probably for,
that's what I'm bringing in now. It is a kind of diplomacy to say that the issue is not only that of Burkina Faso. Suppose the C-130 crossed through Niger Republic and possibly Mali, then coming down to Burkina Faso. And they would say they
like
have
a U-shape of sorts.
So, something like that, which means the plane was not actually going north. The plane would have been cycling around the West African sub-region. And then it happened when the issue of that Benin coup was still fresh. So that would have made pundits to start saying, okay, suppose Nigeria was going to do something different there. One other issue you would have to check is the reports we are having is 11 crew members and passengers, so to say, all of them military. The C-130, and they said it has 2 crew members and 9 passengers.
Soldiers, yes.
The C-130, all the models I know, I won't say I know all the models, but generally the C-130 would not have 2 crew members. It's not possible.
It must be more than that.
It must be more than that. The least you would have is 4. And you can have up to 12 or 15, depending on the model and your mission. So to tell us that it is only 2 crew members and the rest are passengers, I think there's something,
but as you said,
militarily we don't know.
This has to do with military politics.
Politics,
amid
exactly.
diplomatic tension. All right, thank you very much, Jamilu Mohammed. I'm still with you in the studio, but luckily for us, we've got Professor Mukhtar Imam now via Zoom. Prof, welcome to the program. Unfortunately, we lost Prof again, but we'll keep trying because he's also an international relations expert, just as you are. But then, Jamilu, now the decision taken by President Tinubu, of course, what we had was that it was at the instance of President Talon of Benin Republic, right?
Yes.
But then there was no clearance by the Senate until today. Can we say Tinubu is always setting the cart before the horse?
Not necessarily so. You see, it was something emergency. And I wouldn't want to say if President Tinubu has violated any rule or any law in this circumstance. I wouldn't know the circumstances of
the exigency of the moment.
The exigency of that very moment. What was the security situation, and what is Nigeria's take in that situation, or even around the West African sub-region. If Nigeria has the political or the military willpower to a kind of militarize the zone, to put a military eye on the whole zone.
In order to protect democracy.
Exactly.
To militarize in order to protect democracy.
The democracy. That is very possible. We wouldn't know that. All we would be saying is the front line diplomacy. Now, what is hidden is what we won't know. So, in that circumstance, if President Tinubu woke up to a serious security breach that would not have required the immediate attention of the Senate, I don't think President Tinubu would be wrong to have acted that way. The only thing is, when people start talking about Nigeria's precarious security problems, and they say, okay, if you are not able to solve your own internal security issues, how are you able to go and support?
This question, if you check the social media, it has taken over the space, that the speed, in less than 2 hours, you mobilize fighter jets or aircraft or whatever name we call it. You also mobilize troops and then transport them to the streets and around the palace in Cotonou. Where did the president get that
That is what,
leverage. Yes.
That is what we know. There are other things we still don't know. Suppose Nigeria had privy to the situation to the before even it happened. Nigeria would have been ready, but they won't. Nobody would say that because it would leak. So it is very possible that Nigeria had prior information, prior knowledge of
all these are possibilities.
There are possibilities.
Okay, then what is the security implication of what we've seen yesterday? Let's start from yesterday, because I want us to now look at how the whole issue is snowballing in a way. But let's start with what happened yesterday. To what end? Is there any advantage Nigeria stands to gain by truncating the planned coup in Benin Republic?
Yes, for Nigeria's security. You see, what we are looking at is coup in Benin Republic. But it is much more than that. We just mentioned how the coup issues are snowballing and a kind of covering the whole of the West
sub-region, yes.
Sub-region. Some people are saying bad governance, poor democratic structures. Well, I think these are secondary factors as far as the issue is now. These are secondary factors. The primary factor came to meet the secondary factors existing. The primary factor, I believe, is the reason why these three alliance states left ECOWAS. There had been a kind of foreign incursion into the West African sub-region. The issue is generally economic. Western powers, plus Russia on the other hand, then China there. There is now there's a kind of new scramble for African minerals, as they did in the last century, scramble through colonialism, and then they say there is this commonly known phenomenon, scramble for African partition, and they partitioned Africa, and everybody
took his own part. Is it the Portugal? Is it France?
Britain, and so on. Okay, now it is the issue of minerals and then the economy. That's what is happening. So while America was building up, fortunately for Africa, the Biden government left, because Biden government was the one that was actually building its own military presence highly around this area. When the Biden government left, Trump came. Trump didn't want to continue that policy.
It's like he is not part of it.
He's not part of it. He doesn't like. So he kind of withdrew, a kind of slowed down. Okay. But then, before then, while Biden was building that scenario, you know, Russia will not sit back. Russia was pushing. That was what pushed the issue of the coup in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. We strongly suspect that that issue is the issue of superpowers. Russia now wants to push away America from this sub-region. So how would it push? Politically, it would have been a very difficult thing. You know, Putin has learned a lot of Africa. He had been in Africa as a spy for close to about...
Is that an allegation or it
No,
really
well, about whether he has hand in it or not is an allegation, but...
The knowledge.
But the knowledge.
Is true.
Of course, he has been here. He has served the KGB, and I think he served around Africa for about close to 10 years. He has been around here, running from one country to another. That is in his profile. It's not something that is hidden. It is in his own profile.
This after the meeting between these three countries, Mali, Burkina Faso,
and
Niger, you know, they issued a joint statement, as you said, saying Nigeria should never attempt to violate their airspace, right?
Yes.
Now, don't you think that Nigeria has been pushed now to a point of no return? Because there is this piece put together by ABM Al-Kali Mamu. For instance, if that position taken by the AES stands, meaning that quite a number of airlines will not even be able to come to Nigeria with ease. He listed like Royal Air, Askai, Air Cote d'Ivoire, British Airways, Lufthansa, KLM, Air France, Ethiopian Airlines, Turkish Airlines, and then all private jets, northbound and westbound too, from Nigeria.
Well, if you are talking about civil
this
aviation...
This is a military personnel, I mean, Air Vice Marshal.
In terms of civil aviation, I don't think the diplomacy would be that bad.
Okay.
It won't reach that stage. In the military diplomacy, things may degenerate beyond what is happening now. It is very possible. But in the civil case, I doubt if they will allow it to degenerate to that. As you mentioned, you see, all these countries and airlines would have to be using these airspaces commonly. Now, the economic and political aspects of it would have to bring our sub-region to a standstill if there is any major incident.
And it will also affect, because if you say Air France here, you say Lufthansa, that is Germany, right?
Yes.
Good. You have British Airways, which belongs to Britain. Then you have Ethiopian Airlines, you have Turkish Airlines, all of this.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Civil aviation, in terms of civil diplomacy, civil aviation, I think they won't allow the situation to degenerate to that level. Even the Sahel countries, they won't allow it.
It will affect them.
It will affect them seriously. It will affect their economy. It will affect their polity, you know. So I think they will not allow it to degenerate to that. The only issue here is Nigeria has not been together with them. And then it is very possible they had a prior knowledge, or they might have been involved in the issue of Benin Republic. It's not impossible.
To extend their frontier.
Of course, to extend their frontier,
I read
yes.
it in some places, people, analysts,
Yes.
saying they are so frustrated that the coup in Benin did not succeed. Because if it had succeeded, you know, looking at the waters around Benin, it will, you know, increase
their own space, their own space of operation. But my thinking is they won't have been involved or even have prior knowledge to it because of the way the attempt.
It was shoddy or what?
It was shoddy. It was very, very shoddy, unprofessional. So I don't think Niger or Burkina Faso or Mali would have been involved in that kind of
assuming now, let's take this hypothesis. If they were involved,
if they were involved,
they might have succeeded.
Even if they don't succeed or they didn't succeed, then that region would have been destabilized. The stakes would have been high. Right now, we wouldn't have known what would be happening there.
Some are asking why Nigeria took that action unilaterally in a way. Of course, we are a sovereign nation, but then, of course, Tinubu has handed over the leadership of ECOWAS, but then it will have been much cleaner in a way, according to some pundits, if Nigeria led ECOWAS force for this action instead of now, you know, going there unilaterally.
Let me tell you, Nigeria is ECOWAS. I don't believe this sub-region called ECOWAS. I don't believe. I believe Nigeria is the ECOWAS itself.
Why are you saying that? Is it because of the meeting that held today still in Nigeria?
If we have our ECOWAS headquarters here, that's not even the issue. The issue is, let us look at the economic bloc itself. We call it Economic Community of West Africa. If it is economic, how economic is it? Look at our GDPs. The whole of the GDP of ECOWAS, if you put Nigeria on the one hand, and then put the rest of the member countries
yes,
on the other hand, I think the whole of their GDPs will only account for less than 30% of Nigeria's GDP.
Is Nigeria that strong?
Yes, economically, yes. That is it. At a time, I think recently, I can't say in the last, I don't know if, no, the last 1 year, I can't give account of it. But before this year, if Nigeria was accounting for about $480 billion, a country like Benin Republic was accounting for about $70 billion. Ghana, I think Ghana was 130 something, you know. So put together, you won't get more than 30% of Nigeria's GDP in the whole West African sub-region. And then look at the population. Everything, every indices if you take, you would see that Nigeria is the driving force. What Nigeria has been doing with ECOWAS was trying to open up, as they say, the market. But even the market, look at the population. Population forms market. And then that's where production comes in. So look at the population of those countries and the population of Nigeria. And then look at the output. So when you are looking at that, you will know that I have always said, even AU, I used to say, I'm sorry to use that, I say even AU is a joke, not only ECOWAS.
When you put it side by side with the might of Nigeria?
Not Nigeria.
Okay.
If you are looking at it globally, we have Africa. We have a population of about 1.7 billion, right? Globally, our contribution to global trade is only about 3%, the whole of Africa. 3%, our contribution to global trade. When our population is close to 20-something%. But our contribution to global trade, the whole of Africa, is just about 3%. So this is Africa. And then now we are talking about West Africa. So you can see how miniaturized the situation is. This is how Nigeria now became a big brother in this condition. This is why Nigeria is the driving force of the ECOWAS. So it's not about Nigeria. There's a situation Nigeria will run to ECOWAS or will run to AU and say, okay, come, let's go and confront so situation. It's the American style leadership that Nigeria is offering. The US does not care about anything, UN or whatever. If America wants to do something, it will go up front and then confront the situation. If you like, say what you want to say.
Explanation can follow.
Can follow.
But then, do you think our trajectory is the same? Because when you look at how US treats its citizens, many of them, US citizens, believe that after America, no other country. And that is why they are always with their government, because the government is also taking care of them. Is it health? Is it education? You know, security and all that. So they have this patriotism to their country. But the opposite is the case. Don't you think this informs the backlash from Nigerians? Because if you aggregate the commentaries on social media and even in legacy media, people are saying, look, Nigeria is trying to slip into US shoes on the African continent, but the country has failed to actually carry its citizens along.
Well, it may not necessarily be so. And it is not exactly so. Nigerians, of course, the patriotism is still there, even when we do not see the government carrying its citizens.
Nigerians still believe in their country.
Nigerians still believe in Nigeria. If we didn't believe in Nigeria, there wouldn't have been Nigeria at this moment. But I'm telling you, Nigerians believe in Nigeria by whatever magic, I don't know. But then, even government-wise, if you, we have only set a kind of mark, a kind of an ego for ourselves that we must reach, or we are at so place. That is why we now see Nigeria as not being fair to Nigerians. But in terms of other standards, if you look at standards around Africa, you would really pity the other countries. You will really know that Nigeria is still working for Nigerians. The only thing is that it is not good enough as far as our standards are.
You are trying to say putting at par.
At par.
Nigerian citizens are faring better.
Better, of course. If you put Nigeria at par with other African countries, Nigerians are performing, are enjoying their country.
But we see them scaling defense rhetorically, going to Ghana. We did a report here that because of the terrible state of our currency, Nigerians now go to Benin, go to Chad, go to Cameroon, Central African Republic in search of greener pastures.
Let me tell you the economics of it. Let me even give an example with Cameroon Republic. In the last 2 years or so, actually, Nigerians were not relocating to Cameroon, but had more trade with Cameroon because our Naira fell against the CFA, right? Now, after or just before the Cameroon elections, things started turning around. Now, there was a lot of instability in Cameroon before the elections, during the elections, and after the elections. And then suddenly, people started selling their assets in Cameroon. Nigerians that went to buy assets in Cameroon started selling their assets and were...
Why?
Because there was instability.
Fear of the unknown.
Fear of the unknown. They didn't know if Cameroon would exist after the Paul Biya elections or not, because France had removed its hands. France said, okay. In fact, France even apologized, said, yes, we know we are part of the problem in Cameroon. We instituted part of the problem in Cameroon. We are sorry about that. But then you people would have to go and rebuild your country. So they said, okay, France had removed its hands on Paul Biya. So people didn't know what would happen.
But he's still there.
Yes,
meaning
he's still there.
Engineering or whatever.
And let me tell you, the reason why he would be there is the same thing I said, Nigeria at par with other African countries. It's the same thing that happened in Benin Republic when a band of military men went and said they had to stage a coup, and without having the president,
Patrice Talon, yes.
And they went to air it on this.
Now this brings me to this very, very important question, which even people in the intelligence circle are alluding, that what President Tinubu did in Benin is just the hands of Macron, while the face of Tinubu. Do you subscribe to this allegation?
It is very juicy. It's easy to subscribe to that. It's very juicy. You see, our president has been a very good friend of France and a very good friend of Macron since he came to power. I think he has visited France more than he has visited anywhere.
Yes.
And people start... Small thing, some people say his health issues, he attends France, and then even if he has his own presidential leaves. He goes to France. So everything of his on France. So he's a very good friend of Macron.
So
and
if
a very good
people who are alleging that it was Macron who said, look, Tinubu, go to
It's
Benin.
very possible. And I even read one piece where the allegation is that the issue of Trump versus Nigeria, issue of Christian genocide in Nigeria, is not actually the issue of Christian genocide. The allegation is that Nigeria contributed money to the election between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. So Nigeria contributed money to Kamala Harris through Macron.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. I read one piece which says something. So I'm only trying to show you how juicy this kind of allegations are, how it's very possible, and it's possible. And you know, Trump does not forgive. He's a kind of person who does not forgive. So they said, he found out that and said, okay, I will deal with Nigeria. And I must look for something. And this case had been there, existing. So he now dusted the file and said, okay, this is the issue we are going to pursue. So it's very possible. The president, it is the onus on the president to come out and show us, not to tell us. Because body language has already shown us that he is a very good friend of France.
And he's tilting his policy.
He has tilted everything toward France. So it's very possible that the reason why France would hold Nigeria dearly is because France has lost the West African sub-region. And losing, they have lost Niger, they have lost Mali, Burkina Faso, the Central African Republic. They nearly lost, in fact, they have lost even Cameroon, because their presence in Cameroon now is not as much as it used to be. So losing that, and they know that their economy, the French economy, thrives very well through the West African sub-region. Now, all these countries I mentioned used to have their central banks in France. They send all their monies back to France, and then France will give them piecemeal.
And that is no longer there.
Now that one is not longer there.
Is it a sign of frustration, apart from the theory you advanced earlier, that, okay, militarily there might be other things, that these AES countries are actually venting their anger with France using Nigeria as an alibi?
That is it. If not, why would a Nigerian Air Force plane violate Burkina Faso airspace?
Even though the Nigerian Air Force, they said they have all the papers, they have cleared.
Well,
this is why
let us take the story of the Sahel nations that they violated. Let us take that one and then deal with it before we come and say, okay, no, it's not true. Even if it is true that Nigeria violated, it violated Burkina Faso. And even in standard diplomacies, Niger will not come and accuse Nigeria of violating the airspace of Burkina Faso. It's not done anywhere in diplomacy. So it's a kind of politicizing the issue, a kind of saying, okay, this is our friend.
Rather than the
real issue. If it is the real issue, Burkina Faso would face Nigeria, and then they will support Burkina Faso from behind, not coming out as an alliance. Of course, if you're an alliance, you see, they even try to define what they want to do is keep this Nigerian military plane and then raise the diplomatic stakes. That was why they defined it as an unfriendly incursion. The next thing would have been what? Hostile. It is step by step. If they now define it as hostile, then they would have the right not to give back the plane. And they can
we
decide
scramble
to do
to see,
anything
because there are some reports on social media that the aircraft, has been released together with the crew, but we are unable to authenticate that. Maybe before the end of this program. But I'm beginning to see that while they are collectively challenging the so-called hegemony of Nigeria, they are individually also checkmating Nigeria's might. For instance, after they issued the joint statement, there is this statement from Niger Republic giving directive that any supply from Nigeria in terms of basic things to Niger, they have to pass through thorough screening at point of entry, through customs, and midway into the country you can't upload, you have to go to a designated place. Don't you think Nigeria is bargaining more than it can chew?
No, I doubt. Nigeria may still need the diplomacy to work, but I don't think Nigeria is biting more than it can chew. Unless we have a very lazy government. There is no way with the existing diplomatic, economic, and political structures, there is no way that any country around this area will point a finger at Nigeria.
Okay, let me read what Colonel Mohammed Yakuba Sido is the Customs Formalities Corporation Officer. He said, Niger has ordered that all goods coming from Nigeria, especially what it described as miscellaneous goods. Miscellaneous goods, this could be, they are fond of buying anything basic. Is it millet? Is it rice? Right? Local rice. Of course, we import through Benin, through Niger and all that. Yes. But then palm oil, sugar and all that.
Essentials.
Essentials, yeah. Now they are saying, for security requirements, all goods originating from Nigeria, particularly so-called miscellaneous, must be unloaded and inspected at the entry offices before any transit formalities. Valid documentation from recognized ports of discharge will only be offloaded at their final destination. That's why I ask, are you not getting agitated that Niger is becoming so hostile and it may be looking at Nigeria as a toothless bulldog? I'm sorry to use
that's a problem anyway. But then Nigeria would perform better than that. If Nigeria wants to make the diplomacy more strict, take the diplomacy, so to say, to the gallows, Nigeria can do it. If you
we can call the block of Niger,
of course,
and we will succeed.
And we will succeed. If you like, you see, is the issue of trade, regional trade. What are we taking to Niger and what are we getting? If government wants, government will say, okay, since you have drawn a line here, we too have drawn a line. We are reviewing our own bilateral or even trilateral or multilateral engagements with you. Well, let's take 90 days and we'll see what will happen. Then they will block they will block the borders. Recently, in fact, it was even 2-3 days ago, President Trump gave American farmers $12 billion, not for anything, because he had reached an agreement with China that China would buy America's soybeans. And then also NVIDIA, that chip company, would also sell some chips to China. So Trump knows that this will help America's agriculture. What he did was to take a lump sum and say, farmers, take this and then ramp up your production. Nigeria can still do that. Block our corridors with Niger or whoever that is giving us this kind of diplomatic problems. If you like, open channels somewhere. If you don't even open the channels, you can bring this kind of lifeline for our traders, for our farmers, and say, okay, take this lifeline and call it a bluff of Niger or whoever.
There is this concept in journalism, they call Afghanistanism, whereby you have an issue in your backyard, but then you don't see it as news. You now move and start thinking about somewhere else. Now, in diplomatic parlance, some Nigerians believe Nigeria is overreaching itself by all this, jumping from this country to this country in the name of diplomatic expediency, when some of these assets and huge resources can be committed, for instance, to around Kainji to bring our boys that have been taken to, Zamfara, to Benue, to northern part of Borno, and all of that. How important is actually diplomatic overreach at the instance of domestic
I
safety?
said we do not have most of this security information, security intelligence knowledge. We don't have most of them. So we won't actually define what is actually happening. I'll give you the example of what is happening between Russia, Ukraine, and the US. The main war, the main reason for the war between Russia and Ukraine is that Ukraine wanted to join NATO and then have America have its own bases in Ukraine.
Which will be much easier for US
to attack Russia, or to spy on Russia, or to do whatever. Then Russia said, no, it's not possible. Whatever it takes, we have to defend ourselves.
So do you believe that
I believe beyond what we
patriotism and whatever, is there personal interest from Tinubu's end which might have a lasting repercussion on Nigeria as a country?
Sometimes this personal interest may be national. You say, Trump say he has personal interest. His own is global trade. He's a businessman. But that is still helping America because he's opening trade corridors for America. So what I'm saying is, in the case of Tinubu, I wouldn't know. President Tinubu may be having personal interest. He may want to invest in the Central African Republic. He may want to invest in South Africa. All this, maybe. So to do that, you have to have a military might that will also support you. If you see an incursion coming from Central African Republic, you still have to go and, in fact, you nib it in the boat there. You don't even allow it to come and meet you. Nib it in the boat there.
Okay, what do you think? What do you think Tinubu should have done differently, or should do differently going forward, so that he can get the buy-in of Nigerians?
I don't know if he would do. The only one thing he would do, if he is able, is to kill this insecurity situation in Nigeria. If he is able to do that, then I think all other things Nigerians will forgive. But whatever he does, whatever diplomacy, even if our GDP is growing, looking at the current insecurity deterioration, I think Tinubu is not going to buy the minds of Nigerians.
Thank you very much, Jamil, for coming to the program and for your incisive contribution to the salient issues beyond the surface.
Thank you.
We've been with Jamilu Mohammed in the studio discussing the pros and cons around Nigeria's relationship in the aftermath of intervention in Benin Republic. Unfortunately, we are unable to have Professor Mukhtar Imam, an international relations expert, because of network connectivity. And this brings us to the end of today's package of the program. Join us tomorrow for another interesting edition. From here, I'm Hamza Idris. Good night.